Irony by get2herheart.
단 한 번도 말한 적 없지만 사실 말야 난 그날에 이 심장이 뛰는 걸 느꼈어. 처음부터 난 알 수 있었어.
Chapter 3. I stared up at the ceiling, listening to my parents bustle around downstairs. My dad was about to leave for work, and my mom was cooking breakfast for my sister and was about to yell for me to wake up, that I was going to be late. Seconds after I dragged myself out of bed, I heard her yelling, and I only continued to pull on my uniform. 15 minutes later, I walked out of the house with toast hanging from my mouth. I was running later than expected and had to run to the bus stop. I ate my toast on the way and tied my shoe that I had forgotten at home. Sometimes I really wished I had a driver's license. It would be so convenient. But I still had another 2 years to go, and anyway, it wouldn't matter because there was a fat chance my parents would buy me a car. Not everyone had parents who give them everything and anything. Speaking of such spoiled brats, I hadn't been on school grounds for more than 10 minutes when Tao and Se-hoon strolled in, barely casting anyone a glance. Which, I mean, they weren't the most popular guys in the school, just the most annoying, so it wasn't like they were meant to get or give any attention. They only had their fangirls. The way I saw it was like fandoms. We had the soccer fandom and the pretty boy fandom. Sometimes those mixed. While half the girls in the school squealed over Se-hoon and his friends, the other half squealed over the soccer players. Some members happened to be in both groups, but as for Se-hoon and Tao, they only belonged to the basketball team that played at the park after school. No one could get within 10 feet of Se-hoon without Kim Taeyeon shrieking like a maniac that someone was stealing her oppa anyway, so Tao was the only one allowed to accept confessions from the idiotic girls that were blinded by his beauty. Cho Yoon-hee! I flinched, thinking it was Oh Se-hoon at first, but then I recognized the voice as belonging to Kim Tae-hyung, the food angel. I brought extra lunch, so don't bother going to the canteen today, he told me, when he caught up with me. I glanced ahead, making sure no one had noticed my name being yelled. What did you bring? I asked, with a slight smile. Tae-hyung smiled proudly. Kimchi spaghetti and pancakes, he said, holding on to the straps of his backpack. I made a face, but shrugged. Sounds like a pretty good combination, I said, following him into the school. Not everyone had shown up yet, but I knew who had, and I thought twice about going to my locker right away. I decided maybe the canteen would be safe and told Tae-hyung to follow. What about getting her books? He asked, sitting down across from me. What about getting bullied by Sunbae? I said bitterly. He frowned and nodded, playing with his fingers atop the table. If we time it right, we can get our books and go to class without seeing them, and then have lunch and get back before seeing them, and hopefully avoid them while leaving. Tae-hyung raised an eyebrow. How long have you been dealing with the Sunbaes? You're pretty smart with this, he said. I sighed, resting my chin on my folded arms. I've been dealing with Se-hoon since my last year of elementary school. So 2 years. His forever loyal mutts joined the party last year. I kept an eye on the door behind Tae-hyung. I knew once they did find us, it would be worse than going to them. They didn't like to be avoided. Seeing none of them, I glanced back at the boy sitting across from me. He gave me a sad look. They started bothering me last year when I transferred here and got my lucky locker, he told me. Oh, you're from Daegu, right? I asked. I remembered a little about when he showed up the year before. He nodded. Man, I don't know why they had to give us those lockers. Why can't they just give the soccer team those lockers? It's not like they don't all hang out from time to time anyway, I grumbled. Looking around the canteen, I spotted a few of the soccer players. They were making a lot of noise for it to be so early in the morning. I don't understand how Kim Min-suk, the sweetest guy in this school, is friends with Luhan, the third biggest douchebag in this school. I spotted said male sitting atop one of the tables, tossing a soccer ball back and forth with one of his members. Tae-hyung turned around to see what I was staring at. Well, they are both captains of the soccer team, he said, turning back to face me. I still don't understand. I shook my head. Anyway, we should get our books now, I said, standing up. Time to face the music. Fortunately, someone broke the radio, and all of the bullies were gone when we got our books. Taehyung and I parted ways, and I happily skipped to my bully-free class. Well, Oh-se-hoon-free. Everyone bullied me, but not like him. While some people threw paper balls at me and laughed when I went up to the board, Oh-se-hoon liked to throw bricks and yell at me. First break came, and I realized that in my surprise at not seeing Oh-se-hoon, I had forgotten my books for my next class. With a frown and weariness, I headed back to my locker, expecting to run into him before I got my book and made it back. But when I got to my locker, only Tao and Luhan were there, sharing a bag of chips and talking about irrelevant things. "Hey, Chubby, missed you this morning," Luhan said, throwing a chip at my face. I flinched, but continued to open my locker to get my things. "You weren't hiding, were you?" Tao asked, now standing beside me. He ate a chip, grinning at me. I inhaled deeply, wanting to snap at him. "Now, Tao, we both know she wouldn't dare hide from us, would she?" Luhan said, standing on my other side. I grabbed my book and closed my locker when a new voice joined in. "What did I tell you idiots about wasting food?" Sehun said, picking up the chip which Luhan had thrown at me. My grip on my book tightened, and I stood in my place, seeing no way around Sehun when I turned around. Luhan shrugged. "Eat it then, Maknae," he said, walking back to his own locker to get things. Sehun frowned and approached me, Tao still grinning like a creep beside me. "How about you eat it?" he said to me, holding up the chip. I clamped my lips shut, and he snickered, still holding the chip toward me. I would not eat that after where it had been, not only on the disgusting floor, but in Oh Se-hoon's hands. I would probably die or get STDs or something. "Come on now, it's delicious." "Then you eat it," I hissed. Bad move. As soon as my mouth opened, he moved and shoved the germ-infected chip into it. I immediately tried to spit it out, but he placed his large hand over my mouth and his arm around my waist, holding me there. Immediately, I rebuked the snack food with my tongue, but it was only crumbling and dissolving in my saliva. I thrashed around, trying to get rid of Sehun's grasp, but it was no use. He was holding so tightly, my hip was beginning to hurt. Luhan and Tao finished off the remains of the chips, and Tao tossed the bag at my face. "It's time for class, Sehun," Luhan said, slamming his locker. "Just giving you a friendly reminder," he whispered close to my ear. With that, Sehun released me and smirked before shoving me out of his way. Once he was out of sight, I began spitting everywhere, trying to get the remains of the chip out of my mouth. I had to admit it tasted good, but that was disgusting. I rushed to the bathroom and began rinsing my mouth out like a crazy lady. The bathroom was thankfully empty since everyone was in class. Turning off the faucet, I sighed, wiping the water from my chin. Now I was late and would be locked out of my class. Usually, I would get off easily with a warning, but I knew I would get detention this time because I had been tardy a lot before Christmas break, and I had been told that if I hadn't whipped myself into shape by the time you returned, I would be in a lot of trouble. And that's exactly where I ended up after school. I slumped over the desk, alone in a quiet room. I was about to go nuts, and it had only been 5 minutes. With a deep sigh, I reminded myself at least I didn't have to deal with Sehun after school. That I did not want by any means. I mean, really, why couldn't he just act like I didn't exist like everybody else? I had been in this school for almost 2 years, and had made only frenemies, while I'd lived with my sister for 16 years. Dealing with being ignored was something I was used to, but now even in 2 years of being bullied, I still wasn't used to the harsh treatment. It was confusing, really. If you hate me so much, why are you wasting your time pestering me? I guess that would always be something I would never understand. "You can go home now," the detention supervisor told me. He was really just a teacher that claimed he was good at sports and had therefore been given the position of PE teacher. Usually, he just lay in the bleachers while the prefects told us what to do. But I wasted no time getting out of there. An hour was just too long a time for me to sit in one spot. Since everyone had already left, I made it home even faster than usual and tore into the kitchen. "We're going out for dinner. Go get dressed," my mom ordered, walking into the kitchen dressed to impress. I turned around and blinked. "Since when do we pay for people to cook for us?" I asked, shutting the fridge. "Since your father got a promotion at work," she replied, shooing me upstairs. I blew my hair out of my face and closed my bedroom door, hearing obnoxious music coming from across the hall. Since the dinner was for my dad, I figured a nice dining out was implied by the way my mother was dressed, so I donned a skirt and blouse before putting on makeup that I never bothered to wear to school. I was just too lazy to wake up early enough to have time to do it. Since it was chilly out, I put on some tights and grabbed my scarf and jacket before rushing downstairs. "Can you ever wear nice shoes?" my sister asked as I slipped on my Converses. I rolled my eyes, tying the laces. "I don't want my feet to freeze, Jaeyoon," I told her, looking down at her pump-clad feet. Really, you'd think it was summer outside with the way she dressed. My dad clapped his hands. "Into the car, let's all be happy and eat well," he said, ushering us out the door. "Where are we going?" I asked as we got in the car and buckled in. I pulled out my iPod and selected a playlist. "I was thinking some Italian would be nice," my dad replied. I shrugged and put my headphones in, drowning out Jaeyoon's annoying voice. She really never shuts up. Jeez. By the time we arrived at the restaurant, I was already starving, and I hurried into the place to be seated. I glanced around the restaurant as we followed the waitress. My family rarely went out, so we hadn't been to this place before. It was nice and quiet. I liked it. Well, it was quiet until we got seated and my sister continued talking. Seriously, no one cares if you're having annoying people in your class that never pay attention. That's life. I sighed, playing with the menu in front of me. If only Jaeyoon had gotten a taste of bullying when she was in high school. Then again, she was already dramatic enough. If she'd been bullied, I would have killed myself with all her complaining. And my parents would have made sure she wasn't hurt or bullied anymore. They would probably personally go to the school and file a complaint if I were her. And it wasn't even like I hadn't told my parents about being bullied before either. Maybe not a complete detail, but I had mentioned that people were bothering me. They told me to stand up for myself and everything would be all right. We all see where that got me. "Are you guys ready to order?" The waitress had returned with our drinks and was holding up her notebook. I waited to order last and then told my family I was going to the bathroom before leaving. Since I had never been to this place before, I found a waitress to ask for directions. Once I had thanked her, I watched her walk off to a table where I caught sight of a familiar face, or a few. It was the school soccer team. It seemed to be most of them. My eyes widened and I quickly turned away when I saw two people who I knew did not belong on the soccer team, but I knew who they were with. Zitao and Kai were accompanying the team's captain, Luhan. I hurried to the bathroom, praying Oh Se-hoon was not with them. Hopefully, he had better things to do with Taeyeon. Ew, ew, ew. Dirty thoughts. Bad thoughts. I made a face as images of Taeyeon and Se-hoon flashed in my head and I rushed into a cubicle. I finished up and sneakily left the bathroom, keeping my eyes peeled. If I could just eat quickly and get out of there, I would be fine. I really couldn't let Oh Se-hoon see me here with my family in public. Not that I was embarrassed of my parents, but Jaeyoon gave me enough crap, and I didn't need Se-hoon knowing my family business. He would only use it against me later. I would look pathetic. "Excuse me." I walked straight into someone by accident, not even paying attention. I gasped, taking 3 steps back, thinking I had run into Se-hoon while lost in my thoughts. I slowly looked up, only to find myself face to face with one of the actual soccer players. I couldn't remember his real name, but I knew everyone called him Jin. "Sorry," I said, bowing my head before rushing around him. I glanced back, wondering if he would go back and tell. I never had any problems with the soccer players, except Luhan, so I definitely didn't want any now. Back at the table, my dad was talking about things at work, eating the food that had been brought as appetizers. I relaxed a bit, knowing my fellow students were on the other side of the restaurant. Soon, our food came, and conversation continued between us all. Mostly my dad talking about work and things with my mom piping in. Jaeyoon and I stayed quiet, her listening, me alert and ready to bolt at the sight of Oh Snot-hoon. "Yoon-hee, come to the bathroom with me," Jaeyoon requested as she stood up. Without thinking, I stood and followed her to the bathroom. "Have you been sleeping well? You have major eye bags," she said, going into a cubicle. I looked in the mirror, examining my eye bags. "Well, they've been worse." I shrugged and played with my hair. "School is trying to break me and my bed up," I said, touching the ends of my long hair. The length was finally back where I wanted it, past my elbows. I had gotten gum stuck in it a few years before, and it had taken forever to grow back out, it seemed. Zaeun came out and started to wash her hands. "We'll get some rest this weekend, and next weekend we'll go out to Hongdae to do something together," she said, looking at me through the mirror. I nodded and she smiled at me, going to dry her hands. I cowered a bit when we walked out of the restroom, and then jumped when a guy suddenly came out of the men's. But it was only a stranger, so I straightened up and kept walking, realizing Zaeun was leaving me behind. My parents were ready to leave, so I headed for the door. I felt like I was going to have a panic attack as I hurried for the exit, leaving my parents and sister behind to pay the bill. At the front, I saw the soccer players standing around at the counter to pay. Sucking in a breath of air, I looked for a certain tall brunette. My stomach flipped, in a bad way, when I spotted him, next to Luhan. But he hadn't seen me yet. That was because I hadn't tried to pass them to get to the door. Oh, well, I had to leave sometime, and now was better because my family was still behind in the restaurant. Zitao caught me first. My hurried footsteps bit me in the butt as he stuck his foot out in front of me and sent me sprawling into the cold floor. "Hey, Grandma can actually dress herself," Sehun said, laughing. "Were you eating off the floor again?" Tao and Luhan laughed loudly with him. I stood up and dusted myself off, glaring at them all. I was about to say something and get myself in trouble again when I spotted my parents coming, Jaehoon right behind them. Biting back my retort, I hurried out of the door, not even giving Sehun another chance to make fun of me.
처음 만난 그날을 기억해 눈이 부시게 빛나던